Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Cynthia Kay. Cynthia Kay founded Cynthia Kay and Company Media Production, which produces high-quality communications for organizations from Fortune Global 100 to small business. A graduate of Michigan State University, Kay holds a master's in communications from Western Michigan University. Cynthia Kay is a passionate spokesperson for small business. For more than 35 years, she has spent significant time speaking to, teaching, and coaching small business owners while running her own award-winning company. She is the past board chair of the National Small Business Association, NSBA. Cynthia and the company have been honored with many awards, including many Tellys and Woman-Owned Small Business Supplier of the Year from Siemens in 2018. She has been named one of West Michigan's 50 most influential women 5 times and is the recipient of over 30 broadcast awards from UPI, AP, and other news organizations. CK and CO Cynthia have authored several books. Her newest book, Small Business, Big Success: How to Beat the Odds and Grow a Great Business, is available for pre-order and will be out May 6, 2024. She writes for Entrepreneur.com, has been featured in Time Magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine's Ask the Expert, and on NPR. Without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Cynthia. Welcome, Cynthia.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so delighted to be on your podcast.
Awesome. Now, even though we ask our guests to provide us with a bio, which you did amazingly, thank you so much, and we do read the bio at the beginning of the show so the audience has a good idea of how, who we're interviewing and what they're about, we always like to give the guests an opportunity to share in their own words a little bit about your journey, how you got from where you were to where you are today. Could you share that with us?
Oh, for me, it's an interesting story. I hope it will be for your viewers as well. I actually started my career in broadcasting and was working in the TV business for about 13 and a half years. But I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to own my own business. And I grew up in a family-owned business, so I saw my dad, and how he worked and how much he loved what he did and his customers. And so one day when I got fired, and my dad always said, honey, you're no one till someone fires you. I decided that rather than, go and work for another television station, and I had some opportunities to do that, I decided I wanted to bet on myself. And so that's how I started my business.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, you have a new book that's being published in a few months. It's called Small Business, Big Success: How to Beat the Odds and Grow a Great Business. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about that book that you have coming up and maybe 3 overarching themes or tenets that the book represents?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for asking. So I really believe that the best way for people to learn about business and is by storytelling. And so the book has not only my story, but stories of entrepreneurs and experts from all over the country. And frankly, that's what I think makes it so interesting, because we all have stories to tell. But I've segmented the book into stages, and it is starting up, because the challenges at starting up are very different than the challenges for those who are in second stage or mature businesses. And then I look at success at operations, because I think many small businesses, that's a place that's very difficult for them, is to really figure out how to become operationally excellent. And then success at growth, because if we don't grow, we're actually going backwards. And then finally, success at stepping out. And someone asked me, well, why cover such a broad expanse in one business? Why not just talk about starting up or stepping out? And I said, I think, when you take a look at the whole life cycle of a business, if you understand that, especially at starting up, and you think about where do you want to end up? Are you growing a lifestyle business or are you growing a business to sell it? If you are in a growth phase, what do you need to really think about? Sometimes it's digging back into what made you successful at startup and visioning the future. And then also thinking about, what kind of legacy do you want? So, for me, covering that expanse, and I've been in business now over 35 years, so I've been through many phases of the business. I think has been reflective for me to kind of look at each one of those. And there's lots of things that I talk about. I talk about customers. I think it's so important that we understand customers and customer services. It doesn't matter if you run a retail operation or a manufacturing plant or a technology company. But I think, understanding customers, I think that's a big overarching theme. Communications is huge because it impacts so much of our business. And then also leadership. What does it take to lead a successful enterprise?
All right, great. So lots of very critical components that you mentioned in the book to running a business.
Mhm.
Now, if you were to, I know you told us about the overarching themes that the book represents, and in your summary just now, you mentioned that you've been in business for 35 years, so you've been through, if not all, well, definitely all phases of a business over 35 years, I'm sure. Not to mention the different experiences that your businesses would have had as it relates to the different travesties that the world had gone through, so the pandemic and, before that, the recession in 2008. So you'd have had different experiences that different economies would have experienced, that the world experienced. If you were to pick, let's say, one characteristic that you believe was critical for you to ride the waves, over all those years to the point where you are today, what do you believe that would be?
Mm. That one is easy for me. It's you know why? Because I think this is something that people don't think about a lot, but it's passion. You have to have passion for what you do. If you don't have passion, you cannot survive all of the challenges that you have. I say I've experienced at least two downturns in the economy, and COVID obviously was huge. But if you don't love what you do, if you don't get up every day and say, wow, what can I do today to make this business better? What can I do today to serve my customers? If you don't have that passion, I think it's easy to get discouraged and I think it's easy to give up. And frankly, the businesses that I see that kind of wither away, it's because they've lost that passion for what they do. It becomes routine and ordinary. And in this world, especially in the world of business, you can't survive if it's just same old, same old. You must consistently innovate. And to do that, you have to have passion.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So, passion is the number one thing that was able to carry you through. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Cynthia. No, Cynthia, I'm sure, in running a business, there are some common mistakes that sometimes business owners will make, right? Regardless of the type of business you're in, whether it's product based or service based. Based on your experience, what would you say are maybe five common mistakes that you find small businesses tend to get themselves into? And if you could give maybe a recommendation for each as to how they could prevent themselves from getting, trapped into that common mistake.
Mhm. Well, I think the first one is not doing their homework. I think so often people believe they have a great idea or a great product, but they're somewhat clouded by their own bubble, by their own world, right? And so one of the things that I will tell you is not doing your homework, not going out and saying to someone, not just do you like my idea or do you like my product, but will you pay for it? So I think that's the first one, and the way that you really avoid that common mistake, quite frankly, is to do your research and to go out and not be afraid to ask the questions. And sometimes I will tell you, I have put in place some efforts that I had to abandon because while I thought it was a great idea, I didn't maybe do enough of the homework to really understand if it was going to be successful. So that'd be the first one. I think the second one is financially. Can you really withstand the the pressures that it takes? So when I started my business, the first 6 months, I didn't even take a salary. And I think that's very common for a lot of business owners is that, they invest in their business. So, are you able to financially withstand what it takes to be able to get through those first really tough years? So do you have the financing? Have you got the capital? Can you withstand that interim startup period where you really need to make sure that you have a lot of, cushion, maybe is the right way to say it. I think that the third mistake that a lot of business owners make is that they take whatever customer comes through the door. And I made that mistake when I first got started. I was so concerned about, am I going to be able to pay the rent? Am I going to be that I maybe took customers that I shouldn't have taken because they didn't align with the goal and the core products and values that we had. And that's a hard one, is to say no to a customer. But if you're getting customers in the door that are taking up your time and taking up your energy and not going to help you move forward, then I think that that's a big mistake. And as a result of having made that mistake, after I was in business for a while, I kind of had to send customers away. And that's very difficult. So having a good idea of who that ideal customer is and really knowing that. I think communication is a big one. Frankly, I think communication is something that business owners don't really spend enough time on. They believe if they have a great product or a great service, that's enough. And it's not. You have to be able to articulate your value. You have to be able to communicate that value to your employees, because I think that's so critical, because it's not just you, unless you're going to be a solopreneur, which is fine. But if you're going to build an organization, you have to be able to communicate with your employees. You have to be able to educate them, have them understand what the value is of the business, and then being able to communicate to customers. I think the number one complaint that customers have today is sometimes they lack the communication from businesses, even if it's simply, I got your phone call and I got your order and we'll get back to you. But being able to communicate and being able to articulate, I think is a big one. And then I think the other mistake that I think a lot of small businesses make is they don't build an external team that can help them. Because as a business owner, you're an expert in what you do, but that doesn't mean that you're an expert in all things. And so I think building that really critical team of outside resources, I like to say, who can keep you out of trouble, because sometimes you get into trouble because you don't know enough. So, having that critical team of people that you can trust and can go to, I think that's it. So I think that, those would be, I think, the five things that I would say are really important.
All right, those are really good. Thank you so much for sharing, Cynthia. Now, Cynthia, can you also share with our listeners what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Oh, when I saw that question, I was like, wow, there's lots of things I can't live without. I guess because of the business that I am in, we have a tool, it's called Function Point, that coordinates all of the efforts. In media production and in communications consulting, there are so many pieces of every single job that all have to align. And being able to track where something is and being able to understand who on the team is doing what, it's a communications tool. And now that may be one that it's for creative agencies, but there are other tools. SharePoint, I think, is a fabulous tool for keeping people really focused. So much of what we do today, there are so many pieces of information, and keeping it organized, I think, is the biggest nightmare, or it can be the biggest advantage. So I think some sort of a communication tool that allows you to track and be able to measure where you are is really critical.
All right, great. So we will have the link to that application in the show notes of this episode. Now, can you
Mhm.
also share with our listeners maybe one or two books that you have read? It could be a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you read recently, but it has had a great impact on you.
Yeah. So there are two that I really love, and the one is Good to Great, and I've read that book maybe twice, and I should go back and read it again. But the reason that I love that book is that I think there is such a difference in just being good and really having a company and growing a company that is excellent. And I think today, good is just the baseline. Everyone expects, if you're in business, that you're good, but can you be great? So that's one. The other one that I really like is The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I think, we as people sometimes think we're effective, but we might be missing some things. So those are two that I really love. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't been doing a lot of reading lately, mostly because I've been doing a lot of writing. So I've been reading my own book. But I do have a list of other books coming up that I would like to read. And then there's one other one that over the years I've kind of steered people to, and it's called Leaders Eat Last. And I think so much of the success of organizations and businesses really rests with how effective is the leader, because the business takes on sort of the personality of the leader. So that's a book that I always recommend, because I think this idea of servant leadership is one that really can catapult an organization ahead.
All right, great. So we'll have those three books and the links to them in the show notes of this episode. Now, Cynthia, our listeners would have tapped into this episode and they would like to connect with you online. Where can they find you online?
Well, of course, I'm on LinkedIn at Cynthia K Biz, and a lot of people connect with me there. But CynthiaKBiz.com is my website, and there's even a sample of the book that can be read there. And I have lots of fun blogs that I write about communication and media production. So that's the best way to connect with me.
All right, thank you so much. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or there's a obstacle that comes in your way, the quote kind of helps to get you back on track.
It's interesting. There are so many quotes that I love, but my father was a huge influence in my life, and there's a quote that my dad always used to say when I faced adversity and I was struggling and didn't know what to do, and he would always say, "Do what's in your heart." And I really believe that if you look inside, you often know the answer. And so that's one that I always remember. My dad always said, do what's in your heart. And his second favorite one was, they can't pay you enough money to do a job you don't love. And so that's my second one.
I love it. So is the second one attributed from your dad as well?
My dad, oh, absolutely.
Amazing.
He was a wonderful businessman. He ran a small business with his two brothers. And, so much of what I think we learn by osmosis. I think I learned a lot about business by watching my dad.
That's fantastic. All right, Cynthia. So thank you so much for sharing those two quotes. We'll definitely have them in the show notes of this episode. As we wrap our episode up, we just like to extend our deepest level of gratitude to you for taking time out of your very busy schedule and coming on our podcast today and sharing about your journey, a little bit about your new book that will be released in May of this year. For those of our listeners that would love to tap into that resource, we'll have Cynthia's contact information in the links for the show notes of the episode. So you can definitely follow along and just be abreast of when the book is going to be released and the different platforms that it will be available on. So thank you again, Cynthia, for coming on, and we wish you all the very best.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time.
Just want to remind our listeners, feel free to follow us on X at Navigating CX, and you can feel free as well to join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. Until next time, I'm your host, Yenny Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yenny Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.